Welcome, coaches. I'm joined by Coach Jack Evans and Coach Jeff Evans, the only two head coaches in the history of the program. My name is Mike Carr, and I'm a 1994 graduate. I was fortunate enough to play for both of these coaches, Jeff when I was a sophomore, Coach Lynch, and Coach Evans is a junior and senior. Like many former players, Jefferson basketball has played a huge role in my life. The program has instilled numerous life lessons and values that I still use today. I'm honored to be a part of the Jefferson Basketball Documentary Project, and I appreciate the fact that you are here with me today to talk about the program you have built over the course of your lives. I'd like to start with some accomplishments. As mentioned earlier, you are the only two head coaches in the history of the program. Under your leadership, so I've done quite a bit of research here, under your leadership, the program has won a lot. According to my research, you have won almost 70% of your games. Coach, you were the head coach for the first 26 years. You won over 500 games in your career, are in numerous Hall of Fames, including the Minnesota State High School League, the University of Wisconsin Superior, the Wisconsin Superior School District Hall of Fame, and the Bloomington Jefferson Hall of Fame. Jeff, you've been the head coach here since 1996. You have won 342 games and have coached in the state tournament numerous times. You previously played and had been the sophomore coach here. Together, this is what you guys have done. You have won 14 conference titles. You have won 13 region titles and made 13 state tournament appearances. I did not even count the region finals that you lost. You have won 4 state titles. You were the runner-up in 2002, third place in 1985, fourth place in 2009, and you won 2 consolation championships. You've coached a number of all-conference, all-metro, and all-state players. Several of your players have competed in multiple sports and have gone on to play Division III, Division II, and Division I sports. Many have entered the high school and college coaching realm. You've had numerous players become professional athletes as well as play overseas, including 3 players that have played in the NBA and 1 that is working currently as an NBA scout. When you hear these statistics and accolades, what are your thoughts? Coach?
Well, I think when you mention all those things, how blessed we have been to be here, both of us, Jeff and I, and to have had talent like we've had, and players that are willing to work hard to achieve these things. And those are all plus factors for coaches to see that happen.
Mm-hmm. Jeff?
They're all good players that you mentioned too, but there's a bunch of players that you didn't mention as well that are equally as important to our program. That some of those players that you mentioned made those other players much better players as well too. So it's kind of it's a team game around here.
How have you been able to, Jeff, sustain the program from all of this success where you've continued to have that success?
Well, I think when I was assisting him and when I played here too, I realized how it's a lot of hard work. It's fun, hard work, but I realized that you reap the benefits of that hard work, and no matter how talented you are, if you don't put the time in and the effort, you're not going to have that success. And we just try to keep the ball rolling with teaching kids good, hard work fundamentals and trying to be as best as they can be.
Yeah.
We started out in 1970 with the game, and we mentioned the very first practice, we want it to be fun. And we tried to follow that along, Jeff has as well as I, and whatever you try to do, it's a lot of hard work, but with winning, of course, more things happen and it becomes more fun. But you got to be willing to sacrifice, which our players have, and there's no doubt about that.
Could you talk a little bit about we're coming up here on 50 years, the relationships with players that you have developed over that career and what it's like to see former players still?
Well, I think that's one of the big perks in not only coaching but teaching, where you see people that you've had in class. And I look at basketball as a class, and they once in a while you'll be in the store shopping or something, and somebody will come up and say, "Coach, I'd like to meet my wife. This is my son, and this is my daughter," and introduce you. That's a real big perk to me, that they remember you and will do that and carry things that far.
Through the course of a season, from the beginning day to the final day of our season, we practice 6 days a week. And never take a Saturday off.
Yeah.
We practice Saturdays. And I think one of my most favorite practices of the year is we've always practiced on Christmas Eve morning. And that morning, we don't know who's going to show up, but former alumni who have played here always recognize that, I remember that we do practice on that day. And they'll show up. They're usually back in town to visit their families, and they'll play pickup basketball. And it's just fun to revisit and talk to some of those kids. And as he mentioned, a couple of years ago, we had a former player bring in his little kids. I got to meet them for the first time, and that's probably my most fun day of the season of the year, just to get together with those old players.
You had mentioned Saturday morning practices, then even over the holiday breaks, and not everybody does that. Where did that come from? How did that originate?
Well, my philosophy was, I think when I very first started coaching, you like your kids, you like all your kids, and you don't like to be that hard on them, and give them a little break. And we lost a game that we should have won early in my coaching career, and they just said we weren't good enough condition. So from that point on, conditioning was always a strong point. And I worked with Jake Lynch for years. Jake felt pretty much the same way. And whenever we had 3-game tournaments in a row, we always feel we were in good enough condition to play well the third day too. Not maybe drop off, but still play well the third day. Looking back over the book in here, some of the teams that we played said we were too tired the third day. And we always felt, and we tried to use as many players as we could, but they were the conditioning factor. And our kids took pride in it.
Sure. And Jeff, you've continued the Saturday morning practice.
Oh, we have. I remember when I was a player too, that even just having that one day off, Monday's practices were hard. You probably remember those too. Even having one day off, Monday's practice was a little difficult. And I think just if you give the kids 2 days off, that conditioning, it goes pretty quick, I think. And you never want to lose a ball game because you're not in good shape. You can lose ball games every now and then because you play a more superior team, but if you lose a ball game because you're not well conditioned, that's all on the coach then.
Okay.
I don't know whether you remember, maybe I didn't do it your year, but a lot of years, first day of January, after New Year's Eve, we practiced 9 o'clock. I don't know if you were part of that or not. I did it many years. And I wasn't a big celebrant of New Year's, but I had to get up too and be here ready to go at 9 o'clock. And so the idea was we're going to start the year with a good practice.
Sure.
And we're going to practice before anybody else does in the state. And I don't know many that did practice on New Year's Day if they did later in the day. But just little things like that, you try to say, we want to be a better condition than somebody else. We're going to go many more days. Saturday practices were not all real hard practices. A lot of times we'd go over the scouting report. We'd have little shooting games, fun games and so forth. And somebody may have been injured. You bring them in, take a look at them. But that was just and they probably grumbled, but they never said anything to us. They came here. We were here, so we had a game the night before too.
It's just an extra day of preparation for scouting, for 2 days preparation for your next conference opponent that you wouldn't get if you took Saturday off.
Right. I know in some of the other videos, Coach, you've talked about this, but I think it's worth revisiting. Can you talk about who coached you and what impressions they made on you that influenced you to do some of the things that you've done?
Well, when I was growing up, coaches were held in a little more esteem, I guess. Coach was he'd take a look at your dad, and then there's a coach. But I had some high school coaches. Well, when I was probably 6th grade or so, at the high school that I was going to attend to, which I really wanted to and looking forward to it, Bud Grant was playing.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there was another by 2 or 3 other outstanding athletes that I like to look forward to. To the time where I could put on one of those Viking shirts. That's what they were, the Vikings. And so that was always a part of and we didn't have the facilities, and we couldn't, the gyms, we couldn't get in, but I look forward to it.
Okay. And then you actually started at Marquette, and Tex Winter was the coach there.
I had a scholarship to that, but I just didn't follow through with that.
Okay.
But when we played in the state tournament, there was 8 teams, and we played the top team. We played a team from Neenah, and we beat them, and they were rated number 1, and then number 2 was South Milwaukee, and we got beat by 5.
Okay.
Somebody on that team you probably would recognize, named George Hansen.
No.
George and I grew up together, and he eventually became assistant basketball coach and basketball coach at Minnesota.
And you had mentioned Bud Grant, and Bud Grant's son played here.
Yes,
Right?
I had 2 Bud's brothers played with us in high school, and then of course,
Dan,
yeah,
I think, right?
Dan here.
Is that right?
Yeah.
In the was he mid-'80s somewhere? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Jeff, how about you? Who coached you and impressions they made upon you?
Well, I think I was very fortunate to not only play for him, but then when I went over after high school, I went to Normandale College and played for Ron Levinson,
Yeah.
a very successful program there, and a little different flavor, practices and coaching style. But then after that, I worked with Bob Erdman, another Hall of Fame coach down at Gustavus, and saw how his practices were and his philosophy was structured. And then I went to Mankato State my last year at college. At Mankato State, I volunteered at Mankato West High School and worked with Gene Bewin and his staff. Their Dean Brudwick was the guy I worked with. He was a 9th grade coach, and I assisted him, and I learned a lot from him too. And so I took a little bit of all those philosophies together and kind of formed my own philosophy. And you're still learning today too.
Yeah. Did you both always know that you wanted to coach?
I think that, well, I guess going back to when I was the football coach and athletic director was a neighbor of ours, and I just admired him. And if I could be like him, that'd be nice. And so being athletic director was a little different job than it is today. And we ran, the spirit all we had was football and basketball.
Okay.
We didn't have hockey, then you could play hockey outside 9 months a year in Duluth, but we didn't have it. But so I don't imagine he got the trouble that maybe athletic directors do today with a variety of sports, girls and boys and numbers. But I admire them, and if I could be like they were, and hope that everybody would feel the same about you as I did about them.
Jeff, did you always want to coach?
Well, I think I watched my mom and dad and saw how much fun and enjoyment they had in their life, and to be around a game your whole life.
Yeah, you literally grew up in this program.
And when I was done with college, did I want that to be done? I don't think so. I think it's just how fortunate you are to live your whole life being around athletics, and every year there's another season and something to prepare for, and it's just a great way of life.
Okay.
And I think if you didn't like kids, it's not a place for you.
Right.
And both of us have always liked kids.
Right.
And, all the way through, and I can look back on my whole career and enjoyed kids. And that's not the place to be if you don't like it. A good way to continue it.
I'd like to go in kind of a different direction here. A unique relationship because, Jeff, you got to play for your dad, but then Mike got to play for you. So I'd like to start with, Coach, what was it like coaching Jeff? And then, Jeff, what was it like playing for your dad?
Well, I never dreaded that. I mean, a lot of people say, I hope you don't have to coach your son. But and he understood that things would, sometimes you want to get a point across and maybe get it off through the team on him. But Jake also had a son playing at the same time. And so we conversed an awful lot. And and he often said, well, you can get on Mike and I'll get on Jeff. So, which wasn't the case. But
Okay.
We had a chance to sound each other out.
Okay. Jeff, what was it like playing here
Well,
for your dad?
We were talking before, and that basketball was just at school. Basketball didn't come home, and I tried to do the same thing with Mikey. We
Yeah.
talked a lot about basketball during practice, but at home, we didn't talk a bit about basketball. It stayed at school, and it's a little different dynamic. A lot of kids today, they go play for their fathers in a lot of traveling organizations and whatnot, and sometimes you see some kids getting their parents showing favoritism toward them. I don't think he ever showed that towards me, and I never showed that towards Mikey as well. And I think, in fact, it was probably a little bit harder on Mikey. Maybe you were harder on me than you were on the other kids. Just to stay away from that, remain that coach-player relationship as opposed to father-son relationship. So it was. We just finished. Mikey just graduated last year, and it really was. I told him that was probably the most enjoyable couple seasons I've had coaching, being able to coach your son.
That's great. Coach, what was it like watching your grandson?
Well,
Was it harder being in the stands?
well, I think once you quit coaching, being in the stands is tougher too. And my wife could probably tell you little mumbles here and there at games and so forth, and not necessarily his coaching, but what somebody in the team didn't do or made a miscue or something. But it's a little bit harder because your flesh and blood is out there, and even second removed, you want them to do well, and so you kind of analyze it a little bit more.
Sure. Do you guys talk basketball today in terms of, like, if you have a game, and you watch the game after the game, will you ever have a discussion about what took place during that game?
Well, we were on the same ushering crew at church. And sometimes that'll come up during church service. We'll sit on the narthex, we'll talk about the game or something, and what do you think about that? But he's never stuck his nose in my business, although he sits right behind our bench. Never stuck his nose in my business, and he may have decided he may have thought about doing things differently than Jimmy and I did, but he never mentioned that. But I've asked him for advice over the years.
Okay.
I usually just try to get a scouting report, who is coming up, and they're in the midst of it. I'm far removed now, and I don't have the ties that I had, little kids coming up and other things about how good this kid or that is, and of course, traveling league will bring that on too, but somebody usually fills me in if I ask them about that.
And you really enjoyed, at the time with scouting, just in watching the other videos, going to, you and Coach Lynch would go and live scout all these different games.
I was fortunate to have someone like Jake, because our philosophy was we're going to give our kids the best opportunity to win a ball game. And a lot of coaches, when we started videotaping games, they wanted to exchange them. And Jake and I said, no, we'll go out personally. And going to teaching, one of the things you had to do is go out and observe other teachers.
Yeah.
So that you could find out maybe what your philosophy of teaching was. And I picked up so much from other coaches.
Sure.
And we make them part of your program, something that's doing it very good. And so it's twofold, I guess, when you scout a lot. And a lot of times, at the end of the week, you're tired and everything, but Jake was always good at it, so we want to go scout somebody tonight,
Yeah. Do you prefer, Jeff, to live scout, or now there's so much video that you can, maybe use Huddle? I'm not sure what it is you guys use, but which do you prefer, live scouting or video?
We do both now.
Yeah.
If you mentioned too, when you live scout, you pick up things that doesn't show on tape, and I think every time I watch a game, whether it be on TV or I think almost every high school or college game that I attend in person, I pick something up. I learn something from that you wouldn't necessarily see on the tape. So you're constantly learning. But with the Huddle today, you have the opportunity of scouting a game, and then you can even watch that game if you have to on Huddle. And